Welcome to the chosen bloom. Every lie they spoke about you collapsed the moment a single voice rose to honor your name. Nothing wounds an enemy more than realizing the universe itself resists their slander. That is the sting burning in them now, chosen one. They thought you were cornered, but it was their own walls that caved in. Picture it. They moved through their circles like investigators, whispering your name with venom, weaving questions soaked in envy. They expected nods of agreement, echoes of bitterness, yet the tables turned. Instead of mud, they found a garden. Instead of decay, they saw blossoms. Instead of shame, they met waves of respect. That was no small reversal. It was a thunderclap across their schemes. Here lies the deeper truth. Human nature bends toward confirmation bias. The mind desperately hunts for evidence to validate its belief. They wanted guilt, they expected scandal, so they searched for proof. But the universe delights in irony. Their questions unearthed not your flaws, but their own emptiness. What they revealed was not your downfall, but their desperation. In the end, you were never the villain. They unmasked themselves. And to you, chosen one, thank you for standing strong. Remember, we spread this light together. Press like, subscribe, and carry this message further. We are part of a force untouchable, unbought, unbroken. Now return with me to the battlefield, for here the satisfaction deepens. They enter a room, shoulders lifted, expecting whispers of scandal about you. But the first voice they hear says they're solid, one of the best I've ever known. And in that instant, their smile falters, their mask begins to crack. They press on, hoping the tide will turn. The second voice answers steady and clear, no issues with them at all, always respectful. Their stomach tightens. By the third compliment, sweat gathers. By the fourth, their breath grows shallow. And by the fifth, the crushing realization strikes. They weren't gathering evidence against you. They were assembling a fortress of proof in your favor. What irony, chosen one. They entered the room as prosecutors, but left as unpaid publicists for your reputation. They prepared a case, yet all they managed was to advertise your greatness. Imagine the humiliation training for a trial, only to discover no crime was ever committed. Instead of skeletons, they found closets neatly ordered. Instead of scandal, they stumbled upon honor. Instead of shame, they uncovered respect. Their own schemes exposed them as frauds. The harder they tried to drag you down, the more their jealousy screamed through every gesture. Their obsession became their confession. And here is the great reversal. The more they demanded proof of your flaws, the more they revealed the weight of your power. They hoped to bury you in shadow, but the light of truth blinded them instead. Now the energy surrounding your name is unstoppable. Every smear becomes free promotion. Every question becomes a spotlight on your integrity. Every rumor collapses under testimonies of praise. That is no mere survival. It is domination. It is the universe thundering, not this one. You cannot touch them. Because the truth is sharp, the problem was never you. Not your choices, not your behavior, not even your mistakes. The problem was their hunger to make you into someone you never were, so their resentment could be justified. But reality does not bow to envy, it bows to truth. And truth has already crowned you, chosen one. Now they sit with the bitter taste of their own failure, humiliated because every witness they summoned spoke only praise of you. The only fools in this story are those who thought they could rewrite your name with lies, when the universe had already inscribed it in gold. Pause here, chosen one, and feel the weight of this moment. They searched for your downfall, yet became unwilling witnesses to your greatness. This is not just a story, it is living proof that the universe bends in your favor. If these words resonate within you, mark it with 777 below. And if this message has already struck your spirit, bless the force behind it. whether by a like, a share, or a gift that fuels the mission forward. Every act keeps the light burning stronger because chosen ones deserve to hear this truth until it becomes unshakable. Never forget, their envy cannot silence your reputation, it amplifies it. That pull you feel in your chest right now is your sign to stay until the end. What comes next will not only deepen their exposure, it will reveal why your name carries power they can never touch. Step by step, the revelation unfolds. Number 1, their cross-examination became your coronation. They came to drag your name through the mud but ended up polishing your crown instead. Nothing sears a hater more than realizing their investigation turned into your celebration. That is the strike still ringing in their bones. And make no mistake, this is no gentle sting. It is a knockout they never saw coming. They believe themselves clever, whispering your name like venom, sliding into conversations with the smugness of detectives ready to crack a case. In their imagination, this was the grand unveiling, the curtain dropping, the moment the world would finally see you as flawed, fake, or guilty. They pictured themselves smirking, relishing the gasps as your image shattered. But reality does not bend to fantasy. When they asked, "So, what do you think about them?" they expected whispers of dirt. Instead, they were struck with waves of admiration. They searched for skeletons but stumbled upon monuments. They sought scandal but unearthed strength. Now, chosen one, hold this vision, a courtroom filled with tension. They stride in with files stacked high, eager to declare you guilty. But as the witnesses are called, one by one, every voice testifies in your favor. Not because you begged, not because you bribed, not because you staged a defense, simply because your very life has been the testimony. Imagine their faces, the smirk fading, the confidence collapsing, the silence suffocating the room as their entire case disintegrates. What they planned as exposure became humiliation. They entered as prosecutors, but left as unpaid lawyers for your defense. That is the kind of irony that gnaws at them through sleepless nights. And let's be clear, this was never about truth. They weren't searching for answers. They were desperate to validate their lies. Psychology has a word for this: projection. They wanted you guilty of the very ugliness that belongs to them. They longed for the crowd to nod in unison, to say, "Yes, we see it too." But here is the truth they cannot stomach. Your reputation speaks louder than their resentment. And reputation, chosen one, is not built overnight. It is years of integrity, layered brick by brick. Years of showing up consistently. Years of choosing character when no one was watching. That is why the answers about you did not waver.
They were steady.
They were unanimous. They were undeniable. So flip the perspective for a moment. Imagine them bewildered, asking themselves, why does everyone have something good to say? Why does no one echo my hate? The answer is painfully simple. Hate cannot spread when it has no evidence to stand upon. Lies collapse beneath the weight of truth. Chosen one, their greatest error was not in asking about you. It was in underestimating the impact you have left upon others. They believed your goodness was hidden. Yet true goodness always leaves its fingerprints. It lingers in memory. It is repeated by those who witnessed it. It is defended even when you are absent. This is why their interrogation became your coronation. What was designed to destroy you became the very stage that lifted you higher. They purchased seats for your downfall, yet found themselves in the front row of your celebration. They sought to play the executioner, but in the end, they were forced to place the crown upon your head. And do not pretend this did not cut them deeply. Envy is one wound, but public humiliation is another. They were not simply mistaken. They were proven wrong, loudly, repeatedly, consistently. And here's the sharpest blade of all, the consistency. If one or two voices had spoken kindly, they might have dismissed it as politeness, perhaps even as false. But when every voice testified the same truth, that was not coincidence, that was character. That was evidence no jury could deny. Reality itself had chosen sides, and it was not with them. This is why you never lifted a finger. You did not storm into rooms defending your name. You did not shout, nor strive to prove yourself. Your life testified for you. Your truth bore its own weight. Even in your absence, the echo of your integrity spoke louder than their accusations. And imagine, chosen one, how that must burn within them. They longed to see you stumble, to sweat, to justify yourself. Instead, you sat in silence while others declared your greatness. That silence was your weapon, and that silence was their undoing. Their attempt did not simply fail, it backfired so violently it left them scarred. The interrogation they prepared to shame you became a megaphone proclaiming your strength. The trial they staged turned into your stage of honor. The witnesses they summoned rose as a choir in your defense. And in the end, they were not the ones holding the gavel. They were the ones begging for the ground to open and swallow them whole. For nothing devastates a hater more than realizing they are the only ones blind to your worth. That is why they now sit in shame, because they are foolish. Foolish for believing truth would bow to envy. Foolish for thinking lies could outlive legacy. Foolish for assuming they could erase what the universe had already inscribed in gold. And the testimony was clear. Every voice they asked gave nothing but praise for you. So let them stew in their silence. Let them sit in the shadow of their failure. For their cross-examination was not wasted, it became your coronation. They sought to interrogate your life, but in the process they confirmed your crown. That, chosen one, is the kind of poetic justice the universe reserves for those who remain steadfast, real, consistent, and true. Number 2, their praise became your punishment song. They sharpened their knives against your name only to watch every blade melt in the fire of your honor. Such is the cruelty of the universe. It does not merely shield you, it turns the stage itself, so that your enemy's investigation becomes their torment. And that torment is unfolding even now. For they did not expect that praise could wound, yet it cut deeper than any insult ever could. Now picture this moment. They sit in a room, leaning forward in anticipation, convinced at last someone will echo their bitterness. They wait for a complaint, a whisper of disapproval, a dark tale to match the one they rehearsed. But instead the words fall like thunder. "Oh, they have always been good to me." Another voice rises calm, respectful, unwavering. A third laughs at the thought of any accusation. "I don't know what you're talking about. They have never wronged me." And then silence. Yet this silence is not peace, it is punishment. For the enemy, praise burns like fire upon bare skin. What was meant to reassure them condemned them instead. You see, they clung to a story to soothe their envy.
Surely others must see what I see.
Surely others agree they are the problem. They gripped that lie like a lifeline. But when every answer returned as honor and respect, the rope snapped and they sank into humiliation. Here's the truth they were forced to face. Their hatred is personal. It does not spring from fact. It does not arise from shared experience. It does not reflect reality. It is born of emptiness, of envy, of their inability to endure your existence.
And here is the cruelest revelation. Praise is light to the worthy, but acid to the envious.
Think of it. To those who love you, every kind word is natural, effortless, warm. But to those who despise you, the same words pierce like daggers. Why? Because each compliment about you highlights the contrast they cannot escape. Every testimony becomes a reminder of what they will never be. Now listen to the questions circling in their minds. Why does no one else hate them as I do? Why am I the only one who sees this? The answer is severe, chosen one. It is because there is nothing to hate. You were never the problem. The problem was always themselves. They project, they twist, they invent because jealousy has blinded them. And when reality refuses to bow to fantasy, only exposure remains. So here they stand alone in their hatred. And nothing weighs heavier than being revealed as the lone accuser in a crowd filled with defenders. Imagine it, they enter a tribunal. Certain witnesses will echo their bitterness. Yet every voice rises against them, and every testimony dismantles their claim. One by one, like dominoes falling, every testimony rose to build your reputation higher. And when it was finished, it was not you who looked suspicious, it was them. They entered with questions, but they departed with everyone else questioning them. That is why the wound runs so deep. Their plan did not merely fail, it backfired so completely that they themselves stood on trial. The sweetest revenge is silence defended by others. And that is what unfolded here. You spoke no word. You summoned no army. You did not fight nor explain. Yet the very ones they interrogated became your shield. Not because you pleaded, but because truth does not require prompting. Truth simply exists undeniable, steady, unshakable. And it was that authenticity, that raw and unrehearsed honesty, which cut them deepest. It left no space for denial, no corner for escape. Picture their faces when the realization struck. They thought they were unearthing evidence, but they were digging their own grave. Each compliment became a shovel of dirt over their credibility. Each word of respect, a nail sealing the coffin of their envy. The trap they prepared snapped shut upon themselves. That is why this was not merely uncomfortable, it was humiliating. They did not just lose. Chosen one, they lost in public. And here lies the bitterest irony. Praise is meant to uplift, to inspire joy. But for them, it became torment. Every good word spoken about you thundered as a reminder. They were wrong, they were small, they could never be what you are. That is why they squirm now in silence. For while praise is music to the worthy, to the envious it sounds like chains dragging across stone. And here is another truth. Reputation is a fortress built from years of action. Lies are but pebbles thrown against its walls. That is why they could not harm you. Your character was already known. The praise they heard was not manufactured. It was the natural fruit of your consistency. They cannot compete with this. They cannot erase it. They cannot rewrite it. And so they are left with the sting of knowing that the very thing they dreaded most, your respect, your honor, your influence, has grown larger than their envy could contain. Let them sit with it, chosen one. Let them replay every conversation in their minds, each voice of praise another brick sealing their humiliation. Let them choke on the truth that what they believed would destroy you instead shattered their own credibility. This is why praise became their punishment. Not because you demanded it, nor because you forced it, but because they went searching for lies and stumbled into truth. They expected to hear echoes of hate, but instead they were drowned in a symphony of admiration. And every note of that symphony struck them like a reminder of their failure. The universe does not need to shout in order to punish the envious. It simply allows truth to echo. And that echo now thunders in their ears. Every person they questioned became another voice in the choir, proclaiming your strength. And while they sat in silence, wishing the sound would cease, the truth only grew louder until it broke them inside. Remember this, chosen one, the praise was not mere recognition. It was punishment. It was the universe ensuring they felt the full weight of their own foolishness. They sought to condemn you, but they condemned themselves. They thought they could prove you were the problem, but all they proved was the poverty of their own spirit. and that wound born of envy cannot heal. Number 3, their shovel found no dirt, only their own graves. They dug for skeletons, but unearthed only their shadows. That is the bitter irony, chosen one. They believed that hidden beneath your name there must be rot. But the deeper they searched, the clearer your integrity stood. They were certain that if they pressed the right people, asked the right questions, or pried hard enough, they would uncover something to weaponize against you. But door after door, whisper after whisper, their hands came up empty. And nothing cuts deeper into envy than realizing you have been chasing ghosts that do not exist. Picture it, chosen one. A man walks into the desert with a shovel, determined to dig up water. He sweats, he strains, his hands are torn and bleeding. Yet every hole he digs is dry. That is what happened to them in their search for dirt on you. Their shovel did not strike water. It struck the reflection of their own desperation, because in truth, they were never seeking your mistakes. They were searching for a mirror to excuse their own failures. And here lies the truth they cannot outrun. In the realm of envy, absence speaks louder than presence. Your absence of dirt did not frustrate you, it exposed them. Their obsession became evidence. Their relentless digging revealed not your flaws, but their hunger to destroy. And people began to notice. The questions shifted. No longer about you, but about why they were so consumed with you. So let the answer be declared. Why was there nothing to use against you? Because they searched in the wrong place. The dirt they sought was never buried beneath your name. It was leaking from their own. They hunted for hypocrisy, but uncovered their own double standards. They longed for scandal, but exposed only their jealousy. That is the power of living consistently, chosen one. No, you are not flawless, but you are real. And real is untouchable. Real offers no ammunition to its enemies. Real leaves them gasping, hands empty, silenced by truth. And silence, in its weight, speaks louder than any defense you could ever give. So while they looked small, petty, and desperate, you stood taller. Their empty hands became your testimony. Their failed hunt became your coronation. And in the end, the dirt they could not find became the grave they dug for themselves. Number 4, they discovered your name is not merely liked, it is armored with trust. Being liked can fade in a single day, but being trusted is a crown no enemy can steal. And that, chosen one, was the weight that crushed them. They expected shallow flattery about you, polite niceties, throwaway compliments, half-hearted praise. But what they heard was not casual, it was conviction. People did not simply like you. They defended you. Their words were not empty gestures, but shields raised like soldiers guarding a name they knew carried weight. That was the moment the knife twisted. They realized you were not standing in the shallow pool of popularity, you were standing on the unshakable mountain of trust. Now picture this, they scattered seeds of gossip into the wind, expecting them to take root quickly. Yet instead of sprouting weeds, those seeds bounced harmlessly off stone. Why? Because trust is bedrock. It is not built overnight. It is forged in quiet hours, in unseen moments, in the steady rhythm of actions aligning with words. You did not gain it by boasting, by begging, or by performing. You earned it by being steadfast when no one was watching. That is why people spoke with certainty. They were not exaggerating, they were testifying. And here lies the sting that gnaws at your enemies. Trust is something they do not possess. They may gather followers, drinking companions, shallow alliances. But ask this, if their name were called into question, who would rise to vouch for them? Who would speak with evidence instead of opinion? The silence that would follow is the very gulf between you and them. For popularity can be purchased, but trust must be lived. They underestimated this truth. They believed their whispers would sway others. Yet those who have walked with your character cannot be deceived by suggestion. They know too much of the real you. They have seen the evidence with their own eyes. And that is why the smear campaign collapsed. Gossip may sway opinions, but it can never erase experience. And the experiences people carried with you were stronger than any lie. So when the reports returned, they were not flimsy words of politeness. They were a collective testimony of your credibility. And credibility, chosen one, is a currency no hater can counterfeit. They sought to strip you of honor, yet instead they uncovered the kind of trust they themselves can never manufacture. Number 5, their lies collapsed upon the stage, exposing their own performance. They rehearsed your downfall as though it were a play, but the audience refused to clap. And nothing is more humiliating than being booed off the very stage you built for yourself. That is exactly what befell them. They held their script ready. In their imagination, you were already cast as the villain, the one tolerated but secretly despised. They believed that when their performance began, the crowd would nod in agreement and join the chorus. But here's the dagger they miscalculated. When the spotlight struck, their lines fell flat. Instead of applause, there was silence. Instead of agreement, there were raised brows. And instead of bitterness, there was admiration for you. Right there, before all, their carefully crafted script collapsed like fragile scenery in a storm. Now picture this. They step upon the stage, clutching their script, ready to declare their truth. Yet every time their mouth opens, the audience interrupts with another testimony. No, that is not who they are. They've always been consistent. They have always walked with integrity. They have always been solid. Their performance is drowned beneath the chorus of truth. And this was not mere embarrassment, it was devastation. For once exposed, it was not only their story that crumbled, but their credibility itself. Here is the truth they forgot. A reputation built on consistency cannot be rewritten by rumor. They thought gossip could overwrite years of integrity. But gossip is thin paper, and truth is stone. They longed to narrate your collapse, but the universe transformed their fiction into their confession. People did not simply withhold agreement, they openly contradicted them. And the unshakable consistency of those contradictions could not be dismissed. That is why the humiliation burned so deeply. They were not merely revealed as mistaken. They were revealed as manipulators. And once manipulation is seen for what it truly is, trust does not merely fade, it shatters. Their performance did not simply fail. It branded them as liars before the very audience they longed to impress. Their script collapsed, chosen one, and while they stood exposed, scrambling for scraps of credibility, you stood taller, your story written not by your defense, but by the undeniable testimony of those who know the truth. Their lies died upon the stage. Your authenticity received the standing ovation. Number 6, the chorus of truth buried their lies alive. One voice can be dismissed, but when the entire room speaks the same truth, the liar's tongue turns to ash. That is what broke them, chosen one. Not merely that people spoke well of you, but that everyone did. Had it been a voice or two, they could have brushed it aside, calling it favoritism, pity, or bias. But when witness after witness, from different times and different walks of life, all declared the same testimony, this was not favoritism. This was fact. And facts weigh heavier than lies. That weight crushed them. Picture it. They stand in the center of a courtroom, clutching their script of accusations. They expect a few witnesses to share in their resentment. But one by one, the witnesses rise, and instead of condemning you, they crown you. Each testimony becomes a stone laid upon their chest. Each affirmation, another nail sealing the coffin of their narrative. By the end, they are suffocating under the pressure of consensus. Their lies did not merely fall apart, they were buried alive beneath the avalanche of truth. And here's the fact they could not escape. Rumors survive in silence, but reputations endure in chorus. They gambled on division. They assumed someone, somewhere, must share their hatred. But when the chorus returned unanimous, their scheme collapsed. It was not scattered voices, it was harmony. And harmony cannot be argued with. That is where the sting cut deepest. For every voice that defended you reminded them of a brutal truth. The version of you they created existed only in their imagination. Their bitterness was not shared. Their envy was not validated. Their hatred was not echoed. The more people spoke with clarity and conviction, the smaller they became. They were not merely wrong about you. They were exposed as the only ones clinging to a lie that everyone else had already rejected. Yes, chosen one, the consensus crushed them. Their credibility dissolved before their eyes. What they planned as your trial became their humiliation. For when truth is unanimous, the liar becomes the loudest fool in the room. And that is precisely what the universe made them. Number 7, they dug for cracks, but struck stone. They came searching for weakness, but every strike of their shovel rang against bedrock. That was the moment their confidence shattered. They convinced themselves there must be a scandal buried deep, a flaw hidden in your armor, a secret waiting to be exposed. That belief fueled their obsession. But the more they dug, the more it became undeniable. Your life was not a crumbling wall. It was a fortress. Now picture this, chosen one. A miner enters a cave, certain he will uncover gold in your floors. He swings his pickaxe again and again, sweat pouring, muscles aching. Yet every strike finds only solid rock. No treasure, no cracks, just echoes of failure. That is your enemy's reality. They expected skeletons. Instead, they uncovered testimonies of resilience, kindness, and wisdom. Every so-called weakness revealed itself as strength. Every assumption turned back on them like a mirror reflecting their own fragility. And here lies the cruel irony. Weakness can masquerade as strength, but true strength cannot be faked. They wanted you to be like them, messy, bitter, hollow. But when people were asked about you, they did not speak of arrogance or corruption. They spoke of how you endured storms without breaking, how you showed compassion when cruelty would have been easier, how your wisdom left imprints on lives you never even knew you touched. That was not weakness. It was living proof of a strength they could never counterfeit. So let me answer the question rattling in their minds. Why do they not collapse the way we do? Why do they not crack under pressure? The answer burns. They do not understand truth. They have never embraced discipline. They have never walked in humility. They have avoided these virtues their entire lives, so they cannot recognize them in you. And that makes your strength unbearable to witness. What they planned as your downfall became their own exposure. Every time they reached for weakness, they grasped only evidence of their own lack. Every time they pressed harder, they were forced to see how steady you truly are. That is why the pain lingers. It is not simply that you had no dirt. It is that your strength became a mirror, reflecting their failure to grow. And truth, chosen one, is merciless. They dug for cracks, but struck stone. Number 8, their questions placed them on trial. They aimed the spotlight at you, but it turned back and burned them instead. That is what happened, chosen one. Their scheme was simple: ask around, plant suspicion, and wait for others to confirm the villain script they had already written for you. But they underestimated how obvious envy sounds when it speaks out loud. The very moment they began asking those loaded questions, suspicion did not fall upon you, it fell upon them. Now picture this. A person stands in a crowded room, whispering your name with venom dripping from their tongue. They think themselves clever, but instead of nods, they are met with raised brows. People glance at one another silently asking, why are they so pressed? Why are they so desperate? Suddenly, the accuser is no longer seen as a truth seeker. They are the problem. The more they probed, the clearer it became. This was never about concern, it was about resentment. Their questions did not expose you. They exposed themselves. Here is a brutal fact. The hunter who cannot hide his hunger becomes the prey. Their tone betrayed them. Their persistence betrayed them. Every question they asked dripped with bitterness, and people noticed. The spotlight swung. You were no longer under scrutiny. They were. And once others recognized the agenda, the conversation shifted. What was meant to be your trial became their exposure. So let us answer the thought that haunts them. Why did no one back me up? Because people saw the pattern. They realized you were not the villain. They were simply desperate to make you one. That is why their plan unraveled. Instead of hearing scandal about you, others witnessed insecurity in them. Instead of gathering support, they created suspicion. Instead of destroying your credibility, they destroyed their own. For the loudest accuser often carries the darkest guilt. And that is the truth, chosen one. They longed to see you diminished, but every attempt only revealed their immaturity, their envy, their obsession. You never needed to defend yourself. You never lifted a finger. Their own words became the rope that bound them. Their own questions became the mirror that showed everyone who they truly were. In the end, their questioning was not your exposure, it was theirs. And now the entire room knows it. Number 9, they crashed into the wall of your invisible reputation. They believed a single rumor could erase you. But history cannot be rewritten with a whisper. That is where they miscalculated, chosen one. They assumed your reputation was fragile like glass, easy to shatter with a stone of gossip. But what they struck was not glass. It was a fortress. What they underestimated was the power of your invisible reputation, the one that has been walking ahead of you for years, silently shaping how people perceive you long before your enemies appeared with their smear campaign. Now picture this. They stride onto the battlefield with arrows of slander, confident they will wound you. But when they fire, the arrows ricochet off armor forged over time. That armor was not forged in a day. It was built through countless quiet moments, moments where you kept your word, where you honored others with respect, where your actions matched your character. Brick by brick, those moments stacked into a wall they could not climb, a shield they could not pierce. That is why their accusations fell flat. Here's the brutal fact. A rumor may last for minutes, but reputation endures for decades. By the time they began their questions, people already carried a library of evidence about who you are. And those memories, those lived experiences, contradicted every lie they tried to spread. To oppose your reputation was like trying to argue against history itself. One may scream at a mountain all day, but the mountain does not move. So let us answer the question gnawing at them. Why did no one believe me? Because people were not guessing who you are. They already knew. They did not lean on hearsay. They leaned on years of truth. And truth always outweighs rumor. That is why their campaign collapsed. Their words were not measured in isolation. They were weighed against your track record, and your track record stood undefeated. That is what burned them most, the realization that your name is immune to sudden attack. You had already laid a foundation too deep to uproot. Every attempt to smear you only revealed how steady you truly are. Their lies struck against your invisible reputation, and every rebound struck them instead. In the end, they did not expose you. They exposed their weakness against history, and history had already crowned you. Number 10, they discovered that noise is not the same as honor. They built for themselves an empire of applause. But applause fades. Honor echoes forever. That is what shook them, chosen one. They mistook numbers for strength. They mistook followers for respect. They mistook noise for power. But then they collided with your reality, the kind of recognition they cannot fake, cannot buy, cannot manufacture. Because what you carry is not mere attention, it is honor. And popularity will never measure up to that. Now imagine this. A crowd roars for a performer upon the stage, cheering, clapping, shouting their name. But when the lights cut off, the crowd scatters. The noise dies, and the performer stands in silence. That is popularity loud but temporary. But honor is different. Honor is when those outside the crowd still speak your name with reverence. Honor is when those who have seen you in ordinary moments still testify to your integrity. That is what your enemies never anticipated. They have noise, but you have weight. Here is the fact that seared them. Popularity can be bought, but honor must be lived. And you, chosen one, have lived it. When others spoke of you, their words did not sound like casual compliments. They sounded like verdicts. They were not shallow nods, but testimonies of reliability, endurance, and truth. That is the kind of respect no rumor can shake. So let us answer the question haunting them. Why can my influence not crush their reputation? Because influence fades with trends, but honor stands outside of time. Crowds are fickle. They cheer today, they boo tomorrow. But people do not defend popularity, they defend honor. That is why their accusations never took root. They threw mud at stone walls that had been sealed with trust for years. And here's the sting they cannot escape. They may hold more followers, more attention, more noise, but when the room grows quiet, when character is questioned, when it truly matters, your name rises first. For honor is not built in the spotlight. It is built in silence, in consistency, in truth. And while they cling to applause, you carry legacy. And legacy always outlasts the crowd. Number 11, their slander became your spotlight. They sought to bury you in whispers, but all they did was plant your name in every mouth they touched. That is the irony now consuming them, chosen one. They believed themselves clever, weaving your name into shadows, dripping it with poison, convinced that the more they whispered, the more doubt would spread. But the universe overturned their scheme. Instead of scandal multiplying, admiration spread faster. Instead of lies gaining ground, your truth echoed louder. Their manipulation did not shrink you, it became your amplification. Now imagine this. A jealous voice tries to dim your light by shouting your flaws. Yet every shout becomes a microphone, broadcasting your strength farther than you could have reached alone. That is what they did to themselves. Each time they dragged your name into a conversation, people did not nod in agreement. They answered with stories of your kindness, your resilience, your integrity. What was meant to be slander became a stage where your finest qualities were praised. Without knowing it, they became your marketing team, unpaid, unwilling, and humiliated. Here is the brutal fact. When lies strike a solid reputation, they boomerang back as amplified truth. Their gossip did not erase you, it promoted you. It carried your name into circles you might never have reached. And when those new ears listened, they did not hear scandal. They heard admiration. They saw consistency. They felt respect. And here is the sting that cut them deepest. They became your promoters. Every attempt to assassinate your character turned into a campaign for your authenticity. They longed for your name to drip with scandal, but instead, it rang with strength, dignity, and honor. They thought whispers would sink you. Instead, they built you a platform. So let us answer the question twisting in their minds. How did our lies make them stronger? Because truth does not merely survive lies, it thrives in their presence. The more they spoke, the more people questioned their motives. The more they schemed, the more your consistency shined. Their manipulation backfired, chosen one. Their whisper campaign became your spotlight. And now, chosen one, the admiration they unlocked can never be taken back. Number 12, they discovered your footprints cannot be erased. They came searching for rumors, yet stumbled upon monuments. And that is what silenced them most. They expected shallow compliments, polite words, perhaps even neutral observations. But what they encountered instead were stories specific, undeniable, unforgettable. People did not merely say you were kind. They remembered moments. They replayed scenes. They testified with lived truths that proved you did not simply pass through lives, you left imprints that cannot be erased. Now imagine this. They ask someone about you hoping to hear bitterness. Instead, that person's eyes brighten. I will never forget the time they encouraged me when I was at my lowest. Another declares, they gave me wisdom that changed the way I saw my entire situation. Another recalls, they treated me with dignity when no one else did. One by one, every voice brought not opinions, but receipts. Not hearsay, but experiences. And that is the kind of evidence that cannot be argued against. Rumors may be denied. Gossip may be dismissed, but no one can erase the way it felt when your presence shifted their life. Here is the brutal truth. Impact leaves scars that lies cannot cover. That is why their plan collapsed. They expected hidden grievances. They assumed people would carry secret bitterness. Instead, they crashed into a wall of lived testimonies, stories of change, of healing, of kindness, of consistency. Each memory became a mirror, reflecting your strength and exposing their lack. And here is the sting they cannot shake. Your presence did not simply touch people, it rooted itself within them. You did not just pass through, you stayed. Your imprint became part of their lives. That kind of legacy cannot be manufactured. It cannot be faked. It requires no announcements, no grand gestures. It builds itself quietly, steadily, authentically. And when people spoke of you, they were not repeating rumors. They were bearing witness. They were not defending you lightly. They were defending history. So let me answer the torment twisting inside your enemies. Why will no one see them the way I do? Because lived truth outlasts whispered lies. People remember you, chosen one. Not vaguely, not faintly, but deeply. And the deeper the memory, the harder it is to erase. Their frustration grew louder, but your validation stood taller. For while they tried to erase you, others carried you in their hearts. And footprints carved into souls can never be swept away. Number 13, their questions betrayed the jealousy they thought they had hidden. Jealousy is the one crime that always confesses itself. That is what they never saw coming, chosen one. They believed their questions were clever little daggers, subtle enough to wound your reputation without cutting their own. But every time your name rolled off their tongue, it did not sound like curiosity. It sounded like envy. It was not investigation. It was obsession. And people could hear the undertone as clear as thunder. Now imagine this. Someone asks once about you, harmless, casual. But then they circle back again and again. Their voice sharpens. Their tone shifts. Their eyes betray them. And suddenly, people are no longer thinking about you. They are asking themselves, why are they so fixated? Why does this name rattle their bones? What was supposed to plant suspicion about you ended up planting suspicion about them. Their questions became evidence. Their persistence became confession. Here is the brutal fact. When someone studies your every move, it says less about you and more about their fear of being left behind. Their probing did not expose your flaws, it exposed their insecurity. Every attempt to drag your character into the mud only revealed how much space you occupy in their mind. You were never under the microscope. They were, and everyone saw it. And here is the sting. Jealousy bleeds. It bleeds through tone, through body, through words. No matter how carefully they chose them, they could not hide it. The more they disguised it as concern, the more transparent it became. People recognized the bitterness behind the questions, the resentment behind the persistence. And instead of damaging your name, they diminished their own. So let me answer the question twisting inside them. Why does everyone think I am jealous? Because jealousy is the easiest mask to tear away. No matter how many stories they spin, the truth leaks through. And in their case, it bled from every question, every whisper, every desperate attempt to validate their hate. What was meant to be your exposure became their confession. They never needed to say the words, "I am jealous." Their actions screamed it louder than any denial. And now, chosen one, everyone sees it. Number 14, their mud became the polish on your crown. They tried to drag your name through the dirt, but the mud turned to gold and jeweled your crown. That is the irony choking them now. Their mission was simple: to tarnish your name so badly that no one would see you the same again. They imagined whispers spreading like wildfire, rumors snowballing into consensus, your legacy collapsing beneath lies. But instead, every smear they attempted only polished you brighter. Now picture this: someone throws mud at a diamond, believing it will dim its brilliance. Yet the harder they smear, the more the brilliance shines. That is what happened to your reputation. Their negativity became the backdrop that magnified your respect, your integrity, your honor. And people did not merely say they are good. They defended you with stories, with memories, with lived experiences that cannot be bought or fabricated. Each story became a jewel, a piece of evidence, another star in the crown you never begged for, but earned through truth. Here is the brutal fact: a crown bestowed by the people cannot be stolen by enemies. And that is what burned them most. The very audience they hoped to poison became your defenders. Instead of whispers of scandal, what spread were testimonies of strength. Instead of a chorus of condemnation, a chorus of admiration rose in your favor. Their plan did not simply fail, it inverted. The very hands that sought to strip away your dignity became the same hands placing honor upon your head. And here is the sting that keeps them restless. You never fought for that crown. They gave it to you. Every slander they whispered, every seed of doubt they planted, backfired into admiration. Without even realizing it, they crowned you in public. What they intended as humiliation became your coronation. That crown is not fragile. It is not built on shallow popularity or fleeting applause. It has been forged from trust, from respect, from the unshakable testimony of the lives you have touched. That is why it is permanent. They wanted your name buried in shame, but instead they unearthed treasure they can never return to the ground. They tried to write your downfall, but instead they carved your greatness deeper into history. They sought dirt and uncovered gold. They wanted your name tarnished, but they ended up crowning you. Now you see it, chosen one. Every attempt to bury your name only revealed how untouchable you truly are. Their lies became your crown. Their envy became your evidence. And their whispers became your legacy. You do not have to fight for recognition. Your life has already spoken louder than any rumor ever could. If this message lit something within you, press the like button. And if you have not yet joined us, make sure to hit subscribe. Stay with us, chosen one. The truth always wins, and your crown can never be removed.